In a moment, you'll have a jaw-dropping discovery about how SpaceX almost smashed and killed Russia's best rocket engine. Stick around to find out. Dmitry Rogozin, Russia's politician and space chief, publicly demands that America fly on their broomsticks like witches in the night. This was a sensitive statement to ridicule all the space agencies in America. Still, Elon Musk has already developed his company SpaceX to the level that no other space agency can outsmart it. The Russian space agency Roscosmos felt they could do worse to America if they eventually dumped them. Still, it benefits America, especially now that Elon Musk and SpaceX have finally become the face of the rocket launch and manufacturing in the United States and even the entire world. No one authorized Russia's President Putin to make the drastic mistake of invading Ukraine, much like a nasty captain of a ship who consistently makes the irrational decision to torture people on board. The whole world turned against Russia the moment Putin ordered his army to invade Ukraine, and Russia's army has been wreaking havoc in Ukraine for weeks now. Amid a slew of sanctions aimed at crippling Russia's economy, it appears that Russia is becoming increasingly frustrated. As a result, they have made another foolish decision by prohibiting exporting rocket engines from Russia to the United States. However, Putin and Roscosmos fail to see that Elon Musk, the mastermind behind SpaceX, may fill America's function that Roscosmos formerly played. Thanks to SpaceX, the company is now doing perfectly well at manufacturing rocket engines like the Raptor engine, so Putin and his allies can eat up their rocket engines. While America will rely on Elon Musk's company, SpaceX, to produce rocket engines, since they are presently the best in rocket engineering in the United States, it will be a means for US President Joe Biden to finally recognize the significance of SpaceX and its outstanding rocket innovation in the US. The United States and the entire globe are no longer prepared to process any agreement with Russia. Dmitry Rogozin, the head of Russia's official space agency, was mocked by Elon Musk when he said that the United States would have to travel into orbit on their own. The space alliance between Russia and the United States appears to be shakier by the day. This has deteriorated rapidly since Russia invaded Ukraine some weeks ago, prompting the US and several other nations to implement additional economic sanctions. Russian space authorities have condemned the sanctions, and as a result, the supply of Russian-made rocket engines to American corporations has been halted. Roscosmos CEO Dmitry Rogozin even declared irresponsibly on Russian television, "Let them fly on anything other than their broomsticks." I'm not sure what this Russian embargo would do to the US space sector, but the usage of Russian engines was already slated to be phased out. Instead, Elon have made enormous strides in creating SpaceX Raptor engines, which are superior. So, how has Elon Musk's Raptor rendered Russia's engine outdated, and why is it a viable alternative to Russian engines? Let's figure it out. First, let's go through the history of the RD-180, which is the glory of the Russian rocket industry. The engine known as the RD-180 was produced by NPO Energomash at a plant outside of Moscow in a marriage that would have been unthinkable during the height of the space competition. The RD-180 is notable not just for the geopolitical quirks of its ascent to prominence, but also because it was simply better than any other rocket engine. If we want to understand what made the RD-80 such a great engine, we need to realize that there is a lot of craft involved, even if hundreds of people work on rocket engines. According to Vadim Lukashevich, an aerospace engineer and Russian space historian, constructing the finest possible rocket engine became a national priority. Soviet officials sought to create the world's most powerful rocket, the energy to sustain their space stations in Earth orbit and to lift off. The resources were provided to a barren would-be Russian space shuttle Glushko to develop the finest engine he could, and he was skilled at making engines. Through him, the RD-170, the RD-180's older sibling, was born. The RD-170 and RD-180 offer significant benefits. They are oxygen-rich, precisely what it sounds like. They increase the amount of oxygen in the system. Oxygen-rich engines burn cleaner and ignite more easily. They also allow for increased combustion chamber pressures and, as a result, improved performance. They are, however, more prone to exploding. The US even recognized that it couldn't rely on Putin's Russia for this highly crucial technology. Still, the Pentagon thinks that weaning itself off the Russian engine will take several years. This is not a simple task, but everything has changed since Elon Musk and SpaceX made these utopias a reality. SpaceX has invented and developed the Raptor, which is superior to the RD-180. Raptors are, in some ways, like an attempt to construct a better violin than Stradivarius made using current technologies. SpaceX has better diagnostics and even more advanced simulation tools than Glushko used. The Raptor has a technological advantage over the RD-180 in that it uses methane as fuel rather than kerosene, which may muck up an engine after repeated use. Methane has a greater specific impulse and burns cleaner. It is also, in theory, much easier to synthesize on Mars, which Musk intends to occupy. Aside from that, the Raptor is similar to the RD-180 in that it feeds the pre-burner exhaust into the combustion chamber, guaranteeing that nearly all of the fuel and oxidizer stored in the rocket's tanks is utilized to create thrust. Now, let's talk about the specs to understand better the SpaceX Raptor's position and the best Russian engine. As we know, SpaceX is now focusing on Raptor 2, which is the Raptor's post-iterative developments, but will have more power, according to Musk's latest announcement, as SpaceX continues to ramp up ground testing of the upgraded engine variant. Raptor 2 now operates routinely at 300 bars. The RD-180 comprises 2 engines, 2 combustion chambers, and 2 bells that share a standard turbopump system. When comparing 2 Raptors to one RD-180, which is a fairer comparison, a pair of Raptors is 5 times cheaper, has far greater thrust, is slightly lighter, and critically for reuse to allow an empty rocket to hover. You can't accomplish that with the RD-180, you either have 2 engines or none. The Raptor can be reduced to 40% power, whereas the RD-180 stalls at 48%. Having known this, it's better to finally conclude that SpaceX Raptor engine is better and can be rapidly replaced by Russia's RD-180 engine, which they finally stopped supplying to the United States. According to Rogozin, 122 RD-180 engines were shipped to the United States during the 1990s, with 98 already being utilized in NASA missions. The Russian action comes after the United States and its allies imposed unprecedented economic penalties in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In the last week, the sanctions have essentially decimated the Russian economy. Since the mid-1990s, Russia has been selling and servicing RD-180 engines used in the first stage of the United Launch Alliance ULA Atlas V rocket. So far, 98 of the 122 deliveries have been utilized. When Russia sends rockets to the United States for use by the ULA, they are offered technical support on rocket integration to ensure everything runs well. Of the 122 rockets sent thus far, 24 are currently lying in a warehouse, and Russia has said that it would no longer offer support, maintenance, or help for those engines. These engines, which power the ULA Atlas V and Antares rockets, are among the most powerful and dependable ever built, having been in service for over 2 decades. However, launches from these rockets aren't keeping up with newer generation launch vehicles from SpaceX or even the Chinese-made Long March family in terms of frequency. Since the sanctions were implemented, Russia has stopped a cooperative project with the European Space Agency and threatened to withdraw from the space station due to Russia's decision to invade Ukraine. If this occurs, NASA will need to find a commercial partner to replace the Russian spacecraft to protect the ISS from collapsing. Elon Musk has stated that the Dragon spacecraft might be modified to do this function and that the Northrop Grumman spaceships are currently capable of doing so if necessary. We'll constantly follow the activities of our American colleagues, and if they continue to be unfriendly, we will return to the topic of the International Space Station's existence, Rogozin stated at the outset of the Ukrainian war. NASA also stated that it is evaluating the ramifications and planning for eventualities, but that the likelihood of Russia quitting is extremely low. Elon Musk and SpaceX is the first to invest the Raptor engine in research and development to make it a reality. Many people have worked extremely hard to reach this position. Falcon and Falcon Heavy have performed admirably for the United States space program. Let's hope SpaceX can continue to fund Raptor and Starship development. Do you believe the Raptor engine will be able to accomplish all of America's space exploration goals? And please keep an eye on Elon Musk's SpaceX's Mechzilla that is ready to catch and launch. You'll be shocked. Click on the screen.